Hello and welcome to the Finding Serenity Podcast. This podcast is designed for anybody who is looking for serenity. And this episode is going to focus on hope as a principle, as something to do in action, how to find it, where to get it, what to do when you lose it. And so I guess, Rhonda, to start, where do you find hope? Where do you get hope?
Well, since I knew we were going to be talking about hope, I thought I would journal about it to get some clarity about it. And JD, it was really hard. I had a hard time journaling about hope, and I love hope. But I think, the other thing I wanted to just say, which I think is, I've been thinking about hope, is that, one of my favorite daily readers in Al-Anon is Hope for Today, but I always call it Hope for Tomorrow, because hope is kind of like, it's kind of like about the next day or the day after that, right? It's not really, is it about the present? I don't even know. It's hard. Hope is hard.
It is hard. I love that you journal about it and then we're confused and can kind of laugh about it. That to me,
It was hard.
somebody who's pretty healthy. Like, I could take a page out of your book there. Like it is. It's just kind of something to be curious about, right? Yeah, I think it's actually for today. I got some ideas about that. So yeah, just kind of like either what came up besides that in your journal or where do you find it? You love hope. Where do you find it today?
Well, that's a good question. I think that hope, there's a lot of things that can provide you with hope, but I think connecting with my higher power really gives me hope. And that, normally that's being out in nature for me.
Okay.
And making spirituality out of that. And, can I give you a cool example?
Please.
Okay. So I was tasked with doing an assessment on these kids and having to determine whether or not they had to be permanently separated or not. And, it was court ordered that I do it. So I was, working on it, thinking I saw all the kids and then I was thinking about it. And, that's a horrible, terrible thing to have to even think about, to whether or not a sibling group needs to be separated. And so this was in the middle of winter and I went out for a long walk in the snow and I saw turkey tracks that were together. And then I saw one turkey separate from the rest of the group because I could see the tracks. And then like a half mile later, I saw the turkey tracks again. And I saw what I think was that turkey rejoined its group, And so that gave me hope, and guidance. And I think that connecting to my higher power and spirituality can really help me with finding hope.
Yeah. Like a balm that's kind of instantly available if I choose to use it, right?
Yeah.
Comfort, hope. Yeah. Yeah. I love that, and if I'm paying attention, I could look all over and find hopelessness or hope, right? So it's again about choice. And I think I have more power in areas I don't think I do and less power in areas I think I do. And it's, so it's, but I think it's important to kind of look at what hopelessness is. And so much of what we talk about in these podcasts, trauma response, distorted thinking, conditioned hopelessness. It's been this way since I was born. Why would it ever change?
Mm-hmm.
Or I've changed before briefly, but I always screw it up or something gets in the way. And that just interferes with hope or with any progress. And so I think it is important to really look at it daily. And there's two things I tell people I wish I could give them and I can't, and one's the gift of desperation and one's the gift of hope. Desperate, I might go do some crazy thing like look for hope in turkey tracks or journal or talk to somebody.
I was pretty desperate, yeah.
But with my asses on fire, I got a long history of maybe trying to act right for a little while and straighten things up, but then the heat goes away. I'm like, I'm fine now. And, given our stories that we don't even know, beliefs, childhood stuff that's still impacting us today, it is hard to find hope. Like, we had this podcast on loving or how to love an alcoholic loved one. And it's like, most people spend their whole lives like just hoping it goes back to how it used to be. The alcoholics hope one day they could just drink and not have consequences or get it under control. And so, but there's got to be, I think, a combination of desperation and hope to build commitment. And there's this woman, she's famous. I sometimes can misquote books, but I'm about 100% close to it, sure that I know her name is Brene Brown. I think she wrote this.
I love her.
She's She's helped so many people,
So many people. Yeah.
And that's the thing about recovery. It doesn't have to be 12-step. It doesn't have to be with a therapist. It could be self-help. It could be on your own, anything. But she wrote some book called The Gift of Imperfection. And she talks a lot about nurturing, cultivating, growing these things. And one of these is hope. And this kind of like being in treatment or going to therapy, like, I hope I get better, or I hope my loved one change, like that. It's kind of a wish. So she talks about these 3 requirements for hope.
I can't wait to hear.
One's a goal. It could be vague or a SMART goal, whatever, a long-term goal or a short-term goal, So that's requirement number 1, to build and cultivate, nurture, and grow hope. Requirement number 2 is perseverance. And, most people give up. Right? It's hard, or I'm going to meetings and I don't like them, or I'm modeling assertive communication and he keeps, deflecting and scorekeeping and blaming, I prayed 3 days and it worked for 3 days, then it stopped working. We give up. Someone looked at me funny. I didn't like what was said at the meeting, or my therapist, I don't really think I think they were making their grocery list and not taking notes about me. They forgot what I said, and it's just like, we exit from the process. So it's a goal, perseverance, and then the third thing she says is critical self-awareness, which would be like, okay, I don't feel hope. I don't believe I have hope. I don't believe I can change. And it's not going to happen overnight. I could look at the meeting and be like, well, some of these people seem to have the same situation as me. They've gotten better. And I can go to, well, I'm different. They don't have it as bad as me, or whatever. But the critical self-awareness, I'm in a process. I want to heal. I want serenity. I'm not going to get it right away. I'm not going to keep it, And, I got a million examples of how this works, like from something as simple as a garden, and I feel like I'm sure you're one more stupid gardening metaphor, right, in recovery. But there's a reason for them, And the idea of, like, I know for me as an addict, like, I will move fucking mountains to get drunk or high. I don't care what it is. I will tolerate, scheme, persevere, do whatever it takes. But then faced with getting clean, I'm like, are you out of your mind? I'm busy. I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. This is taking too long, my sponsor didn't answer the phone. I'm not autistic or a math genius, but I still know my primary drug dealer's phone number, and I haven't called him in 16 years. Why? Because I keep calling. I persevere. I mean, that's the disease of addiction driving it. Ding dong doesn't answer, right? But yeah. And so it's important because all 3 of those are critical, and again, it doesn't have to be some SMART goal, measurable. That helps. But today I want to do blank. What might get in the way of it, And then could I just be like, wow, I wanted to read 3 chapters. I only read 1. Critical self-awareness might say, maybe I set the bar too high. Maybe I was tired and needed to rest. Can I pick it up tomorrow morning? Can I readjust my goals? It's like real gentle, right?
Yeah.
So
some
yeah,
flexibility and grace.
Yeah. And it's just, I really believe, and we've talked about this a bunch, that just people that are hurting, whether they're aware of it or not, just have no belief the story can change. And I don't watch too many movies, but there's this famous one it's funny. I think it's funny. It's called Dumb and Dumber. And have you ever seen
I like the Dumb and Dumber series, yeah.
Yeah. And so, like, I'm probably getting it all wrong. Most people who know it can quote every line in it, but like he's all gussied up with his dumb buddy, and he's attracted to this one woman who's like out of his league, and she thinks he's sweet, knows he's a moron, but he's sweet. But he's like kind of like fumbling over trying to ask her out. She's like something like not in a million years, or the guy a chance, and she's like, yeah, 1 in a million, and he like loses his mind. He's like, you're saying there's a chance, and it's like you must throw up like the dumbest energy to consider the possibility you might get better, find serenity. That's one of the reasons I think, and we talk about healing and being in community, is like, I don't see it myself, but it's pretty cool when I see other people grow. And maybe that starts to make me consider, well, if this ding dong can do it, so could I. If they through this, so could I. It's hard to get without people around you, I think, and so many people are trying to heal, like in the midst of chaos, somebody drinking in the home, an abusive spouse, no support network. Like, so it's the little things that are really good. And then I really like that perseverance and the critical self awareness. Because again, if I can prepare myself and know this is not going to be a straight line, linear healing, I get to this point and I'm good, then I'm not maybe as shocked when the same thing keeps happening or the results were good one day and bad the other. Maybe they're just all in service of being in this process. But it's just such a different outlook. And, you talk about coming into recovery and just being angry, desperate, hopeless, and I don't know. You're not those things today,
I
right?
think that yeah, and I think though I want to come back to the perseverance and the critical self awareness because I think if you have been raised around the disease of addiction, or if you're in relationship with someone who is an addict, then you may have had. I mean, you probably got cut off so many times from emotional abandonment, because the person that's an addict can't be present for you, and so when you go to them and you want to be validated or whatever, and they can't do it, then you kind of give up on perseverance, right? You just kind of you have learned helplessness. And then I think, and with the critical self awareness, I mean, one thing we talk about in here is about the bondage of self. And so if you start getting into a hopeless or kind of a depressive, negativistic view of the world, that's the bondage of self. And critical self awareness is being able to, I think, say, oh my gosh, I can see I'm getting negative, but I can fix it with hope. I can fix it with gratitude. And I mean, there's a lot of ways to get hope. I said I go out in nature, but I also go to meetings, and a lot of people share, about how they were in a bad situation and how they got hope. And in going to meetings when people have the same problems and they've gotten through them and they have hope, that's incredibly helpful. And so I think that those kinds of things can really be helpful.
Yeah, just like the gardening metaphors, all the acronyms of recovery could be kind of like enough, but they're usually pretty accurate. And what you're just saying is one that is for hope, hearing other people's experience, right?
Yeah, that's a good one. Hearing
And
other people's
it's just
experience.
like, yeah, and I find that when like whether anyone ever listens to this, relates to it or not, like the red button or whatever and stop, like I feel like 10 feet taller. I'm like, I'm talking to a friend. We're talking about solution. We're both miracles, and it's like, this is awesome, you
It
know?
does awesome.
It's cool. So yeah, and it's just kind of like, I always had heard this thing that was like, what was it? Grief shared is halved, and that doesn't mean like just sharing the pain or whatever. Sadness means it's split in half. But the follow up to it was that joy shared is doubled, But this whole learned helplessness, normalized dysfunction, the horrific becoming normal is just like, I deal with it every day, and it's a prescription to stay miserable.
Yeah, it is. It's a habit. It's
Yeah.
terrible.
And this bondage itself, I just think, is what's so critical. And I still think people are, and I can still, so like ego weak is like self pity is not a personal attack. There are people that will listen to me in self pity, but it's like that's blocking me from hope, That's blocking me from gratitude. It doesn't mean I'm not allowed to be angry, sad, or hopeless. Do I choose to share it? Do I choose to try to use gratitude to kind of combat it? Use the word and rather than but, to build some hope because I won't continue without it, and some people are really goal driven, and I never have been, but it's pretty cool to use the critical self-awareness to be like, wow, I persevered today. I wanted to quit and I didn't, like that. If I pay attention and reflect on some of this stuff, like it does build hope, but it's hard work. Right. And that's the thing is that we're, I think, so sick that whatever our sickness is, I say this a lot, the disease does not want me recognizing, seeing hope, doing something different, using the word and, being grateful, thinking there's a chance. Like it just doesn't want it,
It's a killer.
Yeah. And it really is. And I just
Killer.
watched someone recently, 1,000% convinced, and they have had, I don't know, I'm probably not exaggerating, 1,000 hours of therapy, 4 or 5 treatment centers, tons of trauma, tons of grief. But like intelligent people say there's no chance. There's just no way. It'll always be this way. You know, I will always have shame. People will never understand me.
Well, some people are sicker than others, but I do believe that recovery is a journey, and some people are further along on the journey than others, but other people serve by guiding those other people. It's definitely, I mean, I think that these 12-step programs are a fellowship, and we help each other, and it's pretty amazing. I mean, it's pretty amazing what happens. And we help ourselves too. I mean, by going to therapy and doing the readings and working on it. But there's also a fellowship that is helpful too.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the thing. There's all kinds of paths to recovery, right? And
Mhm.
you can go online and find a million people that bash 12-step recovery or
Yeah,
12 recovery
true.
people who bash other 12-step fellowships. It's like,
Yeah.
but it's like, do I want to find what works for me? But I don't think that there's any path to recovery that doesn't involve at some point community, accountability, honesty, perseverance, hope.
Yeah. I
Like,
think so too. I mean, it doesn't, yeah, you're right. Like there's a million paths, but most of the paths have these same universal features for sure.
mhm.
They're like archetypes, really. I mean, hope, I think, is an archetype in a way.
Yeah, I would agree. And that's what I do like about the peer driven recovery networks is that I might not feel good about myself, but I'm kind of somehow able to treat you well and listen to you. And if I keep doing that, maybe slowly I might start to give myself the same compassion, grace, and empathy I would give you, and vice versa. And it's hard to do that learning all this stuff. Like if I just had read that book, The Gifts of Imperfection, I'd have been like, these are great ideas, but on my own, like, no, without trying out, having someone remind me, like, hey, you're struggling, let me walk through this with you. Just independently, I'm never going to get it. It's just like great ideas, and buzzwords, and it just like there's no experience tied to the idea.
I know you were talking about the disease a minute ago, but I just would, in talking about fellowship and the disease is so isolating, and it's really isolation leads to depression and completely being bounded by self.
It really does. And it's kind of like end stage addiction because what it is, your brain perceives everybody as a threat. And I might gussy it up and be like, I don't want to have anybody watch me go down the tubes or be like, they just don't understand me. They're trying to mother and father me when I'm older than them, but it's all just my brain's just hijacked. And it's interesting. Like I've heard this from both sides, like working with people with addiction and their family members is like, their lives are not going well.
Yeah.
And like, follow my recommendation, try out a meeting, whether it's for the family member, a meeting directed towards family members, or an addict, a meeting directed towards addiction recovery. And they both say the same thing. I hated it. I'm like, what'd you hate about it? Like, that's pretty normal. What didn't you like? It's just a bunch of people complaining about their problems. My life is not anything like theirs. It's just a bunch of morbidity. And that's just, again, whatever it is, whether I'm right and it's the disease or this illness or shame, whatever it is, but it's just like a way to be like, because there's no critical self-awareness, which would be, if that's all these programs were, they would not exist. Nobody would
They would
ever.
fail. Right.
But I don't see that. And so I just really think there's just some wiring where people, not everybody, I guess, but are super afraid of change. And so you can find a million holes to poke in everything. And that's why desperation's so important. Just like maybe I'll crack my mind open,
I mean, but in that situation, I mean, a lot of times in that situation when people are saying that, that is total projection. They are projecting their misery onto everybody else in the meeting. They can't even hear. Like their projection is so intense, it distorts the reality of the situation. And which is another sign of the bondage of self. I mean, it is that and how it leads to isolation, because if you project that onto something, an aid, something
Yeah.
that's going to help you,
How are
and
you?
then reject it, then you move away from treatment.
So I like working with people, and I always encourage them. I'm like, tell me what you hated. Tell me about all the people in there that are awful. Tell me everything you hated. You know, they're good at that. Or even sometimes a little bit, no, man, I dug it. You know, and I'm like, no, you didn't. You know, I heard you earlier talk about how stupid it was. You're allowed to think it's stupid. If you want to change, can we look? Are you all or nothing it? Was there one thing you liked about it? Even if the coffee was good. Well, that sucked too. It's like, okay, you know, and there's, I don't know if I told you this, but in graduate school, we had to read this book, and it was like, it was so daunting. I mean, it was like this big, and I don't know what the hell half of it, more than half of it meant. I have no idea what's going on, but it was weird because I was always taught you don't want to label your clients, but there were some labels in there, and I've never used them with somebody, but one of them was pretty applicable. I would qualify help rejecting complainer. You know, it's just like, you know, no. And it is. Like, it's projection, it's denial, it's the fear of change, it's the fear of having to do some hard work, maybe finding out a solution. And I do think kind of that people know like it's going to be hard work. You know, I was told, and it was one of the 2 billion things that confused me. They're like, you know, JD, drugs and alcohol are just the most glaring symptom of your disease. And I was like, you assholes, it says drug and alcohol treatment right there on the sign. You know, what are you talking about? And I found out they were talking about what you talk about, the bondage of self, the fear, the self-pity, the shame, the
It's
disbelief.
painful.
Yeah.
It can ruin your life. I mean, you know, for all the things you said.
Yeah. And so it's like, I would think that's the idea. A takeaway is like, where are 3 places I do know I find hope? Looking at puppies on Instagram. Go do that then tonight, you know, like just start there, you know, taking a walk, you know, calling my grandkid, whatever it is just start somewhere to develop the practice of maybe not taking a negative view towards it, you know.
And a gratitude list is always good. I mean, you can, you know, I mean, 3 things can just help you reset your attitude.
Yeah, right.
You know, I'm grateful for this glass of water.
You know,
I'm grateful for this hair product.
it really is. I might have told you this. I was working with somebody. They got out of the practice of writing and were talking to me about wanting to start writing. They need to. Like, and I was like, the best way to start is like, don't journal. Like, you haven't written in months. Don't do that. It's just like gratitude list, a bullet point. And I was just like, I made the mistake. I thought of saying, just start with like something like your TV or your guitar. And the guy looked at me. He's like, you know, I'm not so shallow as to be grateful for material things. And I started to want to correct him. But I was like, no. Like, okay, if that's your value, don't be. But I'm pretty grateful for my computer. It's a start, right? You know, but yeah, that's like it is. I got to start somewhere. And then it's like, oh my God, this is this long journey. How is walking 50 feet going to help you lose 100 pounds? Well, it's a start, right? And that's it, you know. And people say these things like, well, I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. Like, no shit. But until I start doing something, I'm not sick and tired of it. And my actions are what changes my thinking, you know. And I wish I could think my way into it, but that's just pretty hard, you know. You know, right on. Well, thank you, Rhonda.
Thank you, JD.
All
Love
right.
you.
Well, me
Bye.
too.